Everything I learned all those years of graduate school, it felt like it didn't work any longer. Like every other system is informed by patriarchy. This is why women are suffering.
Dr. Amanda Hanson is a clinical psychologist redefining womanhood in the 21st century. She fuses modern psychology with holistic wisdom to challenge outdated norms.
Can you imagine a world where women had to inject poison into their faces to feel lovable and chosen? They didn't understand that the instrument of them was already the gift.
As women, there's so many conversations that we just can't have.
The theme that runs through the blood of every single woman is this profound ache to be mothered. Without the ability to craft that within ourselves, we will be grasping forever.
You want to go into natural aging.
My lines, my sunspots, the patterns on my skin as it's loosening, those are the stories of my life. And a grandmother that looks like a grandmother, that feels really important to me.
Dr. Amanda, so good to have you. Wow, this is going to be a great conversation.
Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for taking the time to have this conversation. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, your journey has been, needless to say, a lot of relaunches along the way. And I always like to start with significant relaunch that really shaped who you are today, that really changed the trajectory of where you thought you were going to go. So let's start there. And then the questions are plentiful on what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I would say the biggest and most notable, while there have been many really huge ones, I would say the biggest and most notable to date was when I was 27 years old and married for about 5 years at that point and unexpectedly pregnant. And in private practice in Southern California. And what I thought I knew about life and being a woman, little did I know within a matter of weeks, everything was about to shift and change and enrage me and activate me and want me to share with everybody what I was finding out. So essentially what happened, I was on the precipice of this moment where I've always been terrified of needles. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. We weren't even talking about starting a family maybe until like 5 more years from then. So it was quite a surprise. And one of the first things I went to is there's no way someone's giving me an epidural. Like no one's putting something in my back, a needle. So that started very innocently on my journey of like my alternatives. When I started to understand the other options like natural childbirth and working with midwives and being able to do this in a way that had so many ancient elements, but so far from what we hear happening, particularly in the United States, I thought this is something I'm interested in. I got everything I could get my hands on. I attended with my husband a 12-week natural childbirth with all other couples in our area. And that opened up the understanding of wisdom, intelligent wisdom that lives within the woman's body that my mother didn't pass down in conversation. My grandmother didn't teach. None of my girlfriends were talking about. And when I started talking about it, I realized more often than not, talking about childbirth was met with so much fear, not just fear of the pain, but fear of what would happen to your body. And I thought, whoa,
So true.
How are we here? Like our bodies do these miraculous things and we're worried about what we're going to look like. This is such a colonized way of thinking about the feminine. And so it dug me even deeper into how did we get here? And that has informed everything. And everything I learned in all those years of graduate school and getting my doctorate, most of it almost immediately felt like it didn't actually work any longer because it, like every other system in the world, is informed by patriarchy and founded by men. And so everything that I was learning was coming underneath this umbrella and system of psychology through the patriarchal lens. And I realized, this is why women are suffering. This is why so much is left out. This is why most women are on this merry-go-round of the same issue over and over again. So it was that time at 27 that opened up and informed pretty much every major family decision we've ever made, with raising children, where we've lived, the types of communities we've been a part of, the type of work and philanthropy we've been a part of. And so I would say that was probably the biggest catalyst for the work I do, informing who I am now as a woman, an embodied woman.
But it's interesting as you're explaining this. I think I heard or I read that at 13, you all of a sudden you were fascinated with psychology.
Mm-hmm.
13, because I actually have a psychology degree. I'm fascinated in neuroscience. That's kind of like where I like geek out on. But I thought, wow, 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking about psychology. Like, take me back to that time in your life, because as you said, your mom wasn't talking about a lot of these things, but yet you were fascinated with it.
I was fascinated in humans in general. And, my mom tells stories of when I was really little. And I have a first memory of one of these moments when I was 8 years old. But even before that, just this gravitation towards people. And I was surrounded by a lot of adults, lots of inquiry and curiosity and questions. My mom was like, you asked questions that were not even didn't seem appropriate, right? This was
Yeah.
adult conversation, and you
Yeah.
weren't afraid to go there, and you were connecting with everybody in the room all of the time, like in this beautifully sincere and vulnerable way.
Mm.
And it was often then met with, well, I think my family all loved me. It was almost met with like, whoa, that's a lot. That's big. That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then my parents got divorced at 10, and it was a
Mm.
very messy and complicated situation, a very complicated unraveling. And particularly for me, my father moving just 3 miles down the road, marrying again and starting a new family, and not acknowledging my brother or mine's existence any longer. And so
No
I
way.
remember praying that he would
Mm.
die. He has since passed,
Mm.
but I remember praying at the time that he would either die, he would be like mentally ill, he would be an alcoholic or a drug addict, because then it would make sense why he couldn't show up for me. But he was a soccer coach, and he was involved in like all of the things. And they had this beautiful backyard swimming pool, and we were struggling to make ends meet. And I thought, oh, I was abandoned. Like, I'm not worth it. So the message was, I'm not worth it. I started to get all these psychosomatic symptoms. My mom was depressed and really could barely handle herself, let alone me. So I was sent to my room a lot and told that I just had to get over it, and I was being too dramatic. And what happened for me is I discovered Lionel Richie.
Oh, this is already going in the right direction.
I
Okay,
discovered
what
Lionel
happened?
Richie.
Tell us the story. Come on.
I'm listening to his music as I'm like crying in my bed. And I just got in a record player from a garage sale, and I have this one record, and I'm listening to it over and over. And somehow I had a place at the time to put the crying and the feelings and all the words and the lyrics. And I was like acting it all out in my mind, like that my parents would get back together, or that he would come and realize that he should have never left me, and all these things. But what happened through all of that crying, prior to that, I'd gone to the Cleveland Clinic. My mom would take me to the Cleveland Clinic and said something's wrong. She has chronic headaches, stomach aches. Her skin is peeling off of her hands and her feet. She hears two voices in her head talking at all times. Something is wrong. Nobody being able to say, oh, well, it's probably all the emotional stress she's under, and no one to talk to about it.
Right.
Insert Lionel Richie, the records, the crying, the rolling around in my bed. Soon after discovering self-pleasure and having all of this happen, little did I know back then that I was actually somatically moving a lot of these feelings through my body. And so
Okay, hold on. You're jumping. You're going so fast. I have like 100 questions already. Okay.
I know.
So stop. And there's so much here that I just want to talk about first. Lionel Richie, let's just say, awesome. I just went to a 50th birthday party where she had us dress up as your favorite Lionel Richie song.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, you can just imagine, Dr. Amanda, like what? I mean, it was so great. So great. But I do want to say, you mentioned that you had this like, I'm abandoned, right? I do believe that many women out there in our generation and what we grew up with feel like we weren't seen, we weren't heard. I remember specifically sitting at a dinner table, and my dad looks at me, he was an orthopedic surgeon, and saying, you know what? Girls are supposed to be seen and not heard. And I was like, not even sure what it meant. All I knew was he did that like zip your lip movement. And my parents got divorced when I was 5. So I was going back and forth between LA, which is where my mom lived, and San Francisco. And I felt like I didn't belong, right? I didn't belong there. I didn't belong in LA. I didn't belong, we'd go on a plane. My brother sitting next to me, older brother, 2 years older, would literally like see me crying because I'm so upset to be leaving, so upset to be leaving each house. I want to stay. I want to stay. He ended up, this typical brother slamming into my arm, punching me like, knock it off, Hilary, because he's having his own issues with this, right? And he doesn't want to see me crying. But you have this heaviness. And at what point did you recognize, like, wait a second, was it through all of the studying and the degree and going to school that you realized, like, wait, because it was a pretty bold comment that I was abandoned. Lionel Richie allowed you to pour that out. Mm-hmm. What happened? How did that happen? Because I think women are coming to terms now in their 50s, in their late 40s, in their 60s, and they're like, holy crap, I'm really messed up. And it happened when I was young.
Yeah, I don't think that I realized it then, actually. And I would have to say, I looking back, this has all been pieced together in hindsight. I didn't realize then, oh, wow, this is somatic practice. And that's why my headaches and stomach aches and skin peeling all got better and the voices in my head stopped. No, I did not have that experience. I just, that's 10 and 11. And then 13, I'm in a classroom and I hear the word psychologist and the teacher starts talking about what it is. And I have this moment of, I want to talk to somebody who can talk to me about my feelings. And then I learned more about it. I went to the library and I read about it and I thought, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. In the time, I thought, I want to talk to kids who are sad. I want to talk to kids who no one else wants to talk to them, because that's what and like most things in life, we become the thing we needed. That's what I wanted to do. And that's how the journey and the declaration at 13 of I will be a psychologist. And I've never looked back.
So when you started to, you get pregnant and all of a sudden everything changes. And I had same experience, except I was carrying twins. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, the doctor said, and just so you know, Hilary, given your structure, your body, all that, you're going to probably be on bed rest the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who says that? Like, I literally
a male doctor.
Yeah. I started crying, the second I got back down to the car and my husband was there and he's like, oh my God, is everything okay? I'm like, no, the doctors were feeding us information. There were so few female doctors at the time, actually. And the male doctors were like, I couldn't even handle it. I couldn't go to them at all. But they were feeding us this, like, what we should be thinking about. And as you said, everything was very, male dominated. Even the bras, I think, that we're wearing today was designed by a man.
Well, the speculum that happens every woman's pap smear was developed by a man who owned slaves and tortured his slaves. And that was developed, and I talk about it in my book, that was developed in the 1860s, and we're still using it on women. All the medical...
And I think it is. It is torture
device. Well, it was...
There's nothing good about that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you talk about also, and I do want to go back because there was a point where you said, in self-discovery. Mm-hmm. As women, there's so many taboo conversations that we just can't have, or we only have it with our best friend, or we only kind of laugh about it, but then we get embarrassed and we don't have it. Self-discovery, masturbation, mm-hmm. having, pleasure of being able to self-pleasure ourselves. Mm-hmm. So important. Yet there's still these taboo conversations. I know that you created your company around kind of what are we not talking about? And what do you feel is like the biggest topic right now that we should be talking about that's still being kind of pushed underneath the carpet?
I think, oh gosh, there's so many to point to, but I would say, if you would have asked me this probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, it would have even been different than my answer now. I would say one of the biggest things that I don't believe we fully understand the complexity of. 6 weeks ago, let me just say this, it would have been the super highway to all of your power, which I still firmly believe is sensuality. And in my work, we go there, right? I do very deep dive masterminds and Lux masterminds. And we talk about, and I think that's what women love, is we talk about everything that you're not able to talk about openly in other places. And we don't just talk about it. We spend a month. I create these different archetypes, and we spend one entire month on a very deep discovery of these different archetypes within ourselves.
Well, thank goodness you're doing it, because the last time any of us did it was what? Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. I mean, like,
Mm,
that was like our big opening to, hey, wait, there's something more
mm.
here. Okay, yeah, I'm resonating with that with that girl in the book,
Yeah,
right? And now you're
absolutely.
talking about it, and people are like, wow, nobody
It's
talks about
it's
this.
so important, but I would say now, after having just wrapped up my 2 cohorts of mastermind, there were 30 women in each, and I begin again on Monday with the next cohorts for the next 6 months. W what and w Doing this work for so long now, something really distilled down for me and hit me like a ton of bricks a couple of weeks ago, and it was this idea that I think I even underestimated the sacredness and the power of this lack of mothering we have as a world. Like, we're all so starved for a mother. Um, we are starved to be nourished. We are starved for inspiration. We are starved for guidance. And so, a big component of this work that I've always been doing was helping women do this divine mothering of self, of themselves. And what is happening, and I have women from all around the world, so this is incredible as a testing ground, because I have women from almost every single continent that I work with, and every cultural background, belief system, race, religion, age, body style, skin color. And the theme that runs through the blood of every single woman is this profound ache to be mothered. It is primal. And we are uncovering something that I think I underestimated, and I'm understanding now that that is a big part. And I've even shifted something that I'm going to be doing in my program as I open the doors on Monday, to bring us in through that journey sooner than a few months later, because it is apparent to me, without the ability to craft that within ourselves, we will be grasping forever. So teaching women on a whole new scale, which I've been doing, but it's a whole new scale now, of how to divine mother oneself when the mother that you have is either deceased and or not capable. I tell
Mm.
the story of, like, we can't keep going to Home Depot week after week and asking what aisle is the milk on. Eventually, they're like, lady, you've been coming here for 30 years, and we keep telling you we don't sell milk. But if you are willing, we've got hammers, we've got ladders and paint, and we're so happy to help you with those. But we don't have milk. Stop
Mm.
asking for that, which has never been and never will be here. And so, when we really understand how to, like, deconstruct all that we expected that we never got, and build something from within, oh my gosh, what I'm seeing happen. Letters written to mothers who are already passed, phone calls to mothers they haven't talked to in 15 years, repair from relationships that they didn't even realize were ruptured. But through our work, I was able to help them notice the ways their relationships with their daughters were
Mm.
ruptured and very fragile, and how to go back and remedy that and create a stronger bridge to their daughters. So the piece is like, it's so clear. This is real legacy work we're doing now. And it is sacred
Oh,
ground I'm standing on.
this is so important. So
Yeah.
5 years ago, my mom passed, and it was a
Mm.
year-long battle with cancer, came out of left field. And I'll tell you, when she passed is when I went deep, and I had that aching
Mm.
of like missing her so much, and just feeling like the emptiness.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of times women don't think about this until the mom has passed,
Mhm.
until they're no longer here. And I certainly never had.
Mm.
And what I ended up, I'll never forget, I was up at we have a cabin up at Silver Lake, and all of a sudden had a crazy channeling experience where I saw myself projected right in front of me with millions of myself, all at different ages.
Mhm.
And you're probably could psychoanalyze this right now, but I was dancing around, and me in the middle was a child
Mhm.
myself, when I felt what I had said, like I didn't belong. And all of a sudden, everyone was holding each other, and we were all like, it's like you are an accumulation of these millions and millions of you that have brought you here. And it was one of the first times that I had this like warm feeling of like, you know what?
Mm.
the veil is so thin,
Mhm.
and everybody that I need to mother myself is right here. Like, I got it. And that is so, when you said that, I'm like, yes, I'm so glad that you are really focusing in on this, because it's
Mhm.
something that we need to do before we lose our mom, no matter what kind of relationship you have with her.
It's the most primal relationship we have, and I have 2
Mm,
biological children and 2 adoptive children, and I
mm,
can tell you their experiences of life, and I believe I was an incredible and am an incredible mom equally to all of them. Of course, they all need different things, but there is something profound, and I remember before adopting our first, reading the book Primal Wound and understanding that the best mother in the world will still not be able to fulfill that hole of that primal feeling of not being wanted. And you know, I don't share my kids' personal stories because they're young adults and it's their stories to share, but I think if they were to speak, they would share the very much the reality of that, and we talk a lot about it, and it is something just to honor and hold that space for, that no amount of incredible adoptive parents or career or love in your life fills that primal need for a nourishing mother from the beginning, because something is fractured at that beginning, right? When the baby goes from and this is not to shame by any sense of the word for a minute, a mother who puts her child up for adoption, but something is fractured and lost in that experience. And the journey
mm.
that adoptive children go on in their life and through young adulthood is a really intense path. And I hope and pray always that they are accompanied by people who really can hold that space for them.
That is without a doubt. And it's so important to be thinking about that, because my stepbrother and stepsister had kind of a, when I say I didn't belong, I mean, theirs was 10 times more that they didn't belong, because they were adopted and they didn't feel like they belonged anywhere either. So it's interesting how we all came together. One thing I do want to address, and I think is such an interesting topic given where we are right now with social media, with media presence so important, is you have decided, I think it was about 7 years ago, to go the natural route,
Mhm.
to stop trying to outwardly fix ourselves, to
Yeah.
stop using any products that would dye our hair, Botox, fillers, anything like that. I think you
Mhm.
even had a breast
I had
reversal.
implants and I had
Yeah,
them and I got them before being pregnant, right? So again, I
it
was
had them for that was your identity for a long time, right?
oh, and
So
when I learned about the body and the woman,
yeah.
I had massive regret that I'd ever even done that. I felt such shame personally that I'd made
Mm.
that choice, that I somehow believed that that made me more feminine or more of a woman. Yeah.
So what happened 7 years ago? What was the relaunch moment where you're like, you know what? This isn't me. This isn't what I want to do anymore. I want to go, as you
Mhm.
say, into this natural aging part of life.
Well, I think that as I was approaching 40 and when that happened, and I was watching all the women around me. My husband's 6 years older, so he'd kind of already gone ahead, started getting gray hair and deeper, recessed wrinkles on his skin, and it was not even a conversation. It was almost like not even a blip on the radar screen.
No, it's distinguished.
Right, and I was watching
Distinguished.
what was
Guys look
happening.
great. I just saw George Clooney on Broadway, and he's like, salt and pepper and everything. Oh, so good. And then,
Mhm.
you know, and then us women are like, oh, she looks really old.
Mhm. And that's really a crisis when women do that. Yeah. So I sat with it for myself and I thought, how do I want to approach this? And I'm a very intentional person, and I don't make decisions just by whim. I make them based on deep intention. And when I really sat with it, it was very clear to me. In high school, I had worked, I mean, in college rather, I had worked in a nursing home and I worked on the Alzheimer's unit. Those were my favorite people. Those were the lines on their faces and their hands, and I would take care of their skin and put lotion on, and I did all of these things. I took their dentures out at night and helped them get ready for bed. I was a nurse's aide, and I remember, I mean, I can barely speak of it to this day. I have particular memories that are so powerful and impacted me and made this indelible mark on my life, that I just find aging fascinating. I find it such a piece of art and so exquisite, and every face is so nuanced. And I feel like, a lot of people get tattoos, and I feel like my lines, my sunspots, the patterns on my skin as it's changing and loosening, those are my tattoos. Those are the stories of my life. And God willing, I maybe will have grandchildren someday. And I want them to be in the arms of a grandmother that looks like a grandmother. That feels really important to me. I want them to
Mm.
take their little finger and trace the lines on my face. I want my 22-year-old daughter, who is so immune to toxic beauty culture, because when I ask her how, and she's like, well, Mom, I've been watching you. I've been
Mm.
watching you love aging and not hiding it or berating yourself or talking poorly about it. And so you revere it. So naturally I'm not afraid. I'm watching you revere it. So I think for me, I just sat with, I think a lot of times we just get in the river and we go with the current and we don't even question if that's the direction we want to be going. A lot of people I feel are living very unconsciously. And so I wanted to be conscious about this decision. And I thought, my gosh, I eat organic food. We pay so much money for our water filtration system and the types of fabrics I put on my body. How would I ever be able to justify doing this to my face or any other part of my body? And so out came the implants, then came all this, all of this stuff happened. And I can't tell you like how free I'm so liberated, but it's because I am living my life based on my true beliefs, not the ones that I may have absorbed from a really sick and youth obsessed culture. My belief is aging is so exquisite. And especially for women, it's such a powerful journey. And I am in an initiation right now because I'm in this end of, I believe, perimenopause, because I'm getting closer now to a year of no period. And I'm here for it. I don't want to take anything to make me go back that way. I want to go that way. And
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm right there with you. Like literally, I think that my last test results now officially say, whoop, I'm in menopause.
Mhm.
It's happened. It's
Yeah.
happened. And I want to mention one thing that we watch women over abuse some of these procedures. And I'll tell you, last November, I have TMJ,
Mhm.
grinding of my jaw. And I kind of wake up in the morning, I'll be like, wow, that was a bad, bad. So I wear a night guard, and the doctor said, well, what we should do is put Botox
Mhm.
in your mandibles
Mhm.
and it will really help. Well, she hit a something that reflected my smile or impacted my smile. And all of a sudden I'm like, what the heck? Do you know?
Mm.
For almost like 2 or 3 months, I couldn't smile more than like a half a smile. And they can't do anything. Once you have bad Botox or bad whatever it is, you're like, that's it. And I became depressed.
Sure.
You can't smile. There's a big
Mm. Yeah.
psychological triggering that happens when you smile.
Yes, and
And
for
the
the people
same,
that you're in relationship with, right?
it was terrible. And I'm telling you, I'm now 6 months, and my husband jokes and says, well, you're almost there. Like we're almost there. But I do, I have to say, there's so many, like you start to literally change
Yeah.
how you're going to age. And I just went through melanoma, and I had a big thing on my head, and there's a big scar under here, and I just I used this shellac makeup to put on top of it. And it's one of those that my daughter is staying with me right now because my husband's out of town, and she looked at me and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a doozy
Mm.
of a scar. And she's like, Mom, it's just going to look like a big wrinkle. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
they don't care. They just want their
Mhm.
mom. They just want and I remember when my mom, when I first saw her aging, I remember thinking, wow, she's going to be so beautiful.
Mm.
Like, and she didn't make it past 78, so I never really got to see her truly age. But my grandmother was 105. And it was
Mm.
yeah, it was a beautiful thing. So I respect you so much, and what you're putting out there. Let me ask you, as we're about to wrap up, when you think about 300 million women that you're impacting around the world, what is the message that Dr. Amanda is taking forward outside of this, idea of like, the aching of mother and sacred mother and all that?
Mhm.
What are you really looking to do?
I'm really looking to leave a legacy where women will hear about women like us.
Mm.
And it's very emotional for me, but where women will hear about women like us and think, who were those women? who did, just like the feminists laid certain groundwork for us, that we laid this certain groundwork where they hear stories about women who didn't believe they were worthy or who had to do certain things to be more lovable. And it had to do with the way they looked primarily or their size of their waist. And think, oh my gosh, I can't believe that those women fought for us to never even have to think that way. Can you imagine a world where women had to inject poison into their faces to feel lovable and chosen? They didn't understand that the instrument of them was already the gift. And there will be a time in a world where I think it'll be in history books and they'll wonder, wow, I cannot believe that those women believed that they were so less worthy than men, that they were inferior in all ways. As a matter of fact, they are so superior because they bring human life forward. And that maybe the matriarchal work that we are doing to construct will, I hope, leave an impact so great that they will never have to know the kind of suffering, that there won't be a time where a little girl's told women should be heard or seen and not heard. And there won't be a little girl at 10 years old when she comes around with her Easter dress and her dad says she looks too fat and he's not taking her to church in that and he's embarrassed for her to take it off. You know, the kinds of stories my clients tell, or that a little girl will never again have to be forced as a child into a sexual situation with a man who could not keep his hands to himself. That's the world I'm hoping to create.
And so I got to keep going with this before we wrap up. So your impact in the world right now is significant. Do you believe that women are finally ready to do something about it?
I really do. I really do, Hilary. I mean, I have so many, I would say the average woman who comes to me is about 10 to anywhere from 10 to 20 years in the self-development journey. And she's exhausted and she's tried a lot of things that have been more or less like a Band-Aid fix or have given her some breathing space for a couple of weeks or months, but didn't long-term have a foundational change from within. And so yes, I think the women are ravenous. They are ravenous for something that is fundamentally already inside every single woman. The way I think about my work, all we're actually really doing is we are removing piece by piece all the patriarchal rubble so that she can actually hear the divinity of who she always was. That little girl who was standing in the middle of that vision that you had, like she knew. She knew that someone shouldn't tell her that it was more important that she is seen and not heard. She knew that her little broken heart had a place and those tears really mattered. She already knew. And so this work that I'm on, it's like, I feel like we're just journeying back home to that little maiden in all of us who already has and had the blueprint for everything she needed before the world started putting all the patriarchal rubble of who you should be, how you should look, how you should act, what's expected of you to be worthy. And so that's the work, is piece by piece. We're removing all that rubble so they can stand up and walk and the power that they were born with. I just help them hear it. It's already there.
You know what's great about what you're saying is that I envisioned a Russian doll, those Russian dolls that
Yes.
you kind of turn it and it goes. It's like that terrible sound in your head, like the chalkboard on nails on the chalkboard. And what we think we need to do is go layer by layer by layer till you get to that little one. Why the hell don't we just drop that goddamn doll, have it explode out, and go right for the core?
Yeah.
Let's just do that. And that's where I admire you so much in your work. And so where can people find out more about you, about your programs? I know you just wrote a book. Tell us more.
Yes, on Instagram and on TikTok. Instagram is where I'm the most active. It's Midlife Muse or Dr. Amanda Hanson. And my website is amandahanson.com. That's where everything is always being shared and announced. And my most exciting thing is always magnetic, which I bring to, it'll be this December 5th and 6th in Phoenix, Arizona.
And that's your event.
Yes, tickets are not on sale just yet, but they will be at the end of summer. And that's the really huge. If somebody wants to experience a 2-day immersion into this work that is really experiential, that would be the place to come. Women come from all over the world.
One of these times, you and I are going to put magnetic with relaunch to a rich life. And we're going to put those two together and it will truly be explosive. So I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you for being here. And I know the listeners have all gotten so much out of it. There were so many other topics that we could talk about. I'd love to have you back on in the future to dive deep into other areas that we only barely covered. So at this point, everyone, we talk about live now, love now, relaunch now. I'd ask you, you hear me often say, what are you done with? I'm done. I'm done with not having that self love, of not mothering myself like I deserve. What is it? Declare it, act on it, reach out to Dr. Amanda and make something happen here. Because when you hear incredible relaunch stories, if they can do it, so can you. And I'll be back here next week with another relaunch story. Thanks again for tuning in.
Thank you.